Yes. Thanks, Rob, for the introduction, and thanks everyone for joining today. Just to explain a bit what we are going to do. So this is really meant for you to ask questions and us to answer as best as we can. We are not going to spend a lot of time into explaining the call again. So we are assuming one week before the deadline that you already have looked at the documents. Nevertheless, I would give you a very quick reminder where all the information is based. And to answer the questions, we have on the panel a mixture of the administrative side of the open call for finance, budget, consortium questions. And then we have on the other hand representatives from all the 5 science clusters. So in case you have any questions which are more relevant or more about the content, so they will be here as well to answer the questions. If you go to the next slide, Rob. So just a quick reminder. So the second open call text is really the text you should look at, not about or anything. So the legal text is on our webpage underneath the second open call. The grants platform is available also from our website. You need to set up an account and then you can apply for the call straight away. There is a whole bunch of already frequently asked questions about the second call. Please have a look before you are asking, or at best, there should be a lot of questions already answered, and it's clustered in different topics, so making it a bit easier to find what you need. Nicoletta is also putting now the links to all these websites in the chat if you want to follow that, but we will also provide the links after the session and the slides. And finally, so if you want to get a better idea or are still not quite sure if it fits in or not, please have a look at the projects we already funded in the first open call. I think it makes it much easier to understand what kind of projects have been successful in the first round and to get an understanding what we are looking for. So, and then finally, yes, as Rob already mentioned, so we are not going to answer questions, picking them out of the chat. If you have questions, please put them in Slido so that other people can vote them up and down. We will then go strictly from the top of the Slido. And yeah, I think that's mostly what we wanted to say in the beginning. And then I would already say, yeah, just we're having a go at Slido.
Okay, so the Slido is available and has been for some time, so please do put in your questions in there and do upvote the ones that you would like us to address. Of course, we get quite a lot of answers, so do have a look if your question is already being asked, and that would at least bring it right to the top. So I see, just a second. Okay, so I see that we have already one with actually 11 upvotes here. So we have from Estefi Valenzuela, is it necessary or recommended to include bibliographic references in the application? And if so, is there a preferred format or section for them?
I'm actually not quite sure if I think it makes sense if it's very relevant for what you are doing, but we are not asking for a specific format.
Okay, thank you. Next up, could you provide examples of the expected impact of the proposed project on an S3 RI or multiple RIs, or how engagement with a science cluster might look? So examples, we're looking for examples here.
I'll just jump in there and say I think the best way is to go onto the website and look at the projects that have been funded. That gives a very clear indication of how there is an expected articulation of funded projects and the research infrastructures.
Thanks, and you'll see the link to that in the chat if you go there now. Okay, next up again from Steffi. Do you have any guidance or tips for preparing the budget, especially regarding eligible costs or how detailed it should be?
Yeah, so for the budget, we are not asking for a lot of details. So what we want to know really is just the total of the personnel costs, the total of the other costs, and other costs are, for example, travel costs, or if you want to organize a workshop, then venue and catering costs could be included. If you want to have a clear detailed list what it's eligible or not, it really follows the Horizon Europe general financial rules. So that's written down in the model grant agreement or in the annotated model grant agreement. We need to follow the same rules because the funding is finally coming from the EC. But as I said, so we don't ask for much details. We really just want the totals. And if you have a bigger budget on other costs, just want to know if it's meant for travel or workshops or whatever. So a split down, but it doesn't need to be very detailed. We do ask for a split of a total of person months. So that means the time you intend or think you will need to spend on the project to implement all the tasks you are suggesting. And for that, we are asking for a split per partner, not person, but organization and tasks. So simply to get an impression who's going to do what, and is the expertise actually there, and is it realistic for the implementation. That's supposed to help the evaluators doing their job.
Okay, thanks for that. We'll move on now, as I see we have 51 questions to get through. So we have from Sebastian Nordhoff, what is the intended relation between project implementation, final deliverables, and budget breakdown? What to put in the task field in the breakdown?
Yeah, so the task is really, if you are planning to implement different things, the whole work, you can split that usually up in smaller bits, what you are planning to do, and that's meant with the task. So what we are going to ask is, okay, if you want to do first that and then that bit and then that bit, okay, we are going to spend on the first part of it maybe 2 person months, and then on the next one 3, and just split that up for the different organizations in your consortium. Or if it's just one organization, then it's just the one organization, but just give the evaluators a chance to see what are you going to do and how much time you are spending on the different steps.
Okay, next up, does a test project for a methodology to more accurately measure the fugitive methane emissions from landfills by integrating satellite and on-ground measure fit? So it's, I guess, one of the domain experts could provide an input here.
What's the meaning of this question? We cannot evaluate the title of a project or the intent of the project, but for sure, probably we can answer the also in the same time to the question that I see in the chat. You have the 5 clusters as major reference large domains, but all domains or inter-domains projects are eligible and will be considered. Then you can have let's say some focus on being more aligned with the European Open Science Cloud ecosystem through your project by using the services from EOSC or by providing in the federation the data results of your project. Or you can also have a direct link with the clusters, with their services, either because the domains, 1 out of the 5 domains is the domain where you are going to focus your project, or because in partnership with the community represented by one of these 5 classes, you try to leverage what they have provided until now in terms of services, in terms of analysis platforms, or in terms of archives, or even standards or other actions. Links are relevant. There is not a limit, neither a priority ranking in terms of domains which could be eligible to the funding.
Thanks for that, Giovanni. I see that we have a question now more on the practical side in the forum. So what do you mean with, are you aware of any open science services or projects in your domain that could have a major policy impact in the next 6 to 18 months?
What do we mean? So where is this question? Where did they pick up this question? Are you aware of any open science service or project in your domain that could have a major policy impact in the next 6 months? I believe that this question, okay, maybe Sally, do you want to react to that?
Yes, maybe. I think that sort of follows on from the last question. So, for example, if you're working in the social sciences and humanities, you may know that there is an existing project available that is about to come online, and that you could build further on it. So, I mean, I think it's building on existing, the main point is about in building on knowing what is happening in each of the research infrastructures in your domain, and knowing what projects are already out there and seeing how you could build further on results of existing projects, including ones that are not there yet. So if there is a project that is already active and you know in this period there will be a new deliverable coming out, then you could make reference to that and build further on emerging results, let's say.
Allow me to make a simple example. If one project is proposing the development and deployment of a service that we can call it, generally speaking, an analysis platform for a specific domain, we do expect a sort of knowledge about what these analysis platforms are already in development or already deployed in the discipline that is pertinent with your project, or even the other disciplines. Because it is normal that in case the project ignores totally what is going on in this field of open science, at the end it risks to, although it's a good project, risks to propose something which doesn't represent an important, relevant breakthrough, or a project impacting positively the evolution of the Federation of EOSC and the evolution of the ESFRI and cluster project that are supposed to mentor the projects. In the same time, you can have also a different situation where you would like to develop something like an analysis platform, but you are more interested in exploiting or co-developing an environment where you want to make science at the frontiers of two disciplines. And in this case, you do not know who you refer to, and through the participation or cooperation of the clusters of the two corresponding domains, we could cooperate in the framework of OSCARS to mentor and to support your project, even if it is about an analysis platform, by choosing something which is in between. Because here, in this second example, what is more meaningful is that you propose an extension of the paradigm to new science domains or subdomains, or at the frontier between two domains with respect to what is already supported or has been supported until now through, for instance, the first call projects.
Okay, thank you for that. Next up, apart from the proposal submission through the portal, is there any science-specific document to be attached to the proposal, and in the case of a consortium?
No, there's no need for any signed document, and it doesn't matter if it's just one organization in the application or a whole consortium. It's really just the online submission.
Okay. Next, which is the expected time scale for evaluation, approval, and earliest possible project start?
So the evaluation is exactly 2 months. So we will finalize the evaluation process mid-July. We probably need then another 2 weeks or so before we have made the final funding decision. So you can expect the results beginning of August. And if the experience we have from the first call, anything to go by, so the first project should be ready to start roughly 1st October.
Okay, next, can elements like budget details, experts, service providers, test sites, co-funding sources, could these be updated after submission as finalization of details is ongoing?
No, that's not possible. The moment you have submitted and the call has closed, so that proposal is as it is and will be evaluated as it is, so you can't change that afterwards.
Okay, next up, should we submit letters of support from institutions that are partners and or grant or us access to digitize their collections, but are not related to any SRIs?
You can do that, but it's not mandatory.
Maybe I could add something as well. It's not mandatory. I absolutely agree with Friederike, but it would be important. So if you're liaising with a particular institution in the social sciences and humanities, I think of cultural heritage institutions, that you've discussed this with them, and also any licensing information about the data sets to make sure that you can. So including information about who owns the content, which licensing, or if new licenses need to be added. So I think as much information you can provide about the relevant data sets would be very valuable.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick reminder to the audience, especially those that have just joined us, we are collecting questions via the Q&A. So we can't guarantee that if you put it in the chat that we can answer it quickly, also because we're picking questions based on upvotes. So please do put your questions in the Slido. Next question, is it enough to only bring new digital objects and RI services to the EOSC Exchange and not use any data or services already onboarded to the science clusters or the EOSC platform? Sally, yes.
Yeah, shall I start on that one? Well, I mean, fair. Reuse is the R of fair. And I think this is really important. So if you've got ideas for reusing existing resources, I think that is just as valuable as bringing new resources. That's my personal opinion, but I think the reuse and having more reuse examples of existing resources is very exciting.
Okay. If there are no further additions to that, we'll move on to the next question. So in terms of OSCAR supporting community infrastructure, to what extent can an application like this be independent of a specific research project? Giovanni, you may need to unmute if you're speaking. Oh,
I'm just trying to understand if the colleagues around the table can help me in terms of OSCARS supporting community infrastructure. Supporting community infrastructure. To what extent can an application like this be independent of a specific research project? I'm not sure to understand.
Maybe I can try and take a guess if possible. So for example, let's think about, I mean, I'm just using a particular example. I'm just thinking aloud now of Wikidata. Wikidata could be seen as a community infrastructure that is not specific to any particular research infrastructure or research project. So if it's something like that is already out there, or that you're thinking of developing and could be used by different research projects or research infrastructures, I think that sounds like a very interesting idea. I don't know if any other colleagues have other thoughts.
Okay, if none, then I guess we can move on. Next question, how important or mandatory the processing of a data set provided by the OSCARS network is?
I could try. I think it's important to describe what you want to do and how you want to do it. I think that relates similarly to the earlier question about reuse of existing resources or data sets in this case, or the creation of new ones. So if you've got a new data set that is very relevant to your research and you would like to share it more broadly through open science or fair data methods, then I think that's fine. So I don't think it has to be already provided, but reuse is also very much welcomed, if that helps.
Can I say that could be relevant as well, a project that succeeding is aimed to provide new data into the context. If we have at the interface between physics and other disciplines, new data, new science projects, a new outcome, they are going to be considered in the federation of resources, including those led and supported by physics, because for the time being, those data, this data is not there. Therefore, it's not a question of having a data set provided in advance as mandatory, neither important. Everything, the two situations are relevant.
Thank you. Next, who will provide credits for the EU cloud infrastructure?
I think in OSCARS, we've been looking, so for I don't know if everybody understands this, but this question is probably related to the European Open Science Cloud, or EOSC. And the EOSC EU node provides credits for researchers to use that infrastructure. Ideally, through your own research institution, you should get access to the credits. And it is very interesting to see how you could potentially use the EOSC EU node in your research. Within the OSCARS project, and particularly in our work package related to services, we're looking into that to make those, to help from a research perspective, streamline those workflows of using that. And if you were to be funded, we can support you to a certain extent in understanding, and this is some work we're doing about how we could help researchers to use the EOSC EU node for their research, and we're looking at that within OSCARS. So I think it's an interesting idea, and read the FAQ. That's what we've been doing of the EOSC EU node about the credits, and that could be a first attempt. Hope that helps.
Okay, next up, if a proposal is accepted, what is the funding schedule like? Is a percentage of the total budget provided as an advance payment?
Yes, we are going to transfer 85% of the budget as a pre-financing, and then hold back the last 15% for after the acceptance of the final deliverables.
Okay, and I think the next question is, let's say, that relates to that. Will the grant for the successful applicant be transferred to the leading institution, and then it can be transferred from there to the consortium members?
Yeah, that's the case. So we are going to sign a contract with the leading institution, and the leading institution is then responsible for the transfer of the money and the organizing of the implementation from their side with their consortium members.
Next, once the project is completed, how will we cover the server and maintenance costs for the service we provide?
Yeah, I'm afraid that is really part of your project to think about sustainability and how you can keep the results and outcomes alive. You should clearly contact the most closest related research infrastructures and clusters. They might be able to help and open up, but we will provide a lot of options, possibilities to actually get in contact with the research infrastructures and the clusters and to work together with them on the sustainability. But it's something you should already think about in the proposal as well.
Okay. Next up, can a charity from an EU member state be the main applicant, or is it better to have individual researchers working at EU universities?
Both is possible. It's really depends on what works better for your project. So if there's an organization, a central organization who is kind of coordinating the whole work or so, it clearly makes sense to have them as the main applicant. Think about what works best, what is the easiest for the implementation, but it's both possible.
Okay. For these proposals, or for those proposals that are submitted for the second time, should we also submit a document that describes what has changed from the first submission?
We are actually asking that question in the online form. There's right in the beginning a question saying, is it if you have you submitted before, is it unchanged, or have you made changes? And in case you have made changes, please describe in 3 sentences also the main points you have changed. We are not asking for an additional document to describe that.
Okay. Next, in the first wave, we submitted a proposal. The rating was high. However, one of the issues was a clear support from a cluster or ESFRI. How do we obtain this?
I think I leave that to my cluster colleagues.
We should see more specifically, so do not hesitate to recontact us for the specific project, because I'm quite puzzled by this point. I do not believe that the ranking or the rating was biased or influenced in some way by the fact that there was not a support from a cluster as free. This is considered in terms of coherence with the global picture, but the quality of the project it relies on all the different criteria that you address with your proposal. So then in terms of obtaining support cluster is free, there are mails for contacting the 5 clusters, or you have the way to contact the ES3 projects through their own web page, and in case after a point-to-point discussion it results that the project that you are proposing is has a fundamental impact on the roadmap of an ES3 project or on a cluster, I believe that the ES3 project concerned or the cluster would not hesitate to endorse your project.
Okay, any other comments from the panelists? If not, we will move on. Okay, so can an undergraduate or master's student be the principal investigator for a project? Is there any rule or conditions about it? Daria?
I would say the proposer needs to be, carefully consider the feasibility of the project for its entire duration. And if this is in the hands of an undergraduate or a master student, how can they be formally employed and paid? And how can you prevent the project will not suffer if they decide to leave or do not continue?
Okay. Next are technical.
Yeah, maybe just to add, so there is no rule from our side. So you can have an undergraduate or master students, as Daria said, you just need to make sure that they are going to be there the whole lifetime of the project, or if not, that you have some plan how to continue the project.
Maybe, Friederike, I was wondering, but I let you consider my wondering and eventually answer more in details. I'm wondering about the following. I believe that in terms of administrative procedure in moving the funding, there should be a sort of legal entity to receive this funding and administrate the funding. We are not going to fund the individuals student without an affiliation that guarantees the management of the funding and guarantees also the success and the execution and the success of the project. Do I say correctly, Friederike?
Yeah, that's correct. So the contract is with an institution, not with an individual. So and then the institution is responsible for implementing it as planned. Yeah.
Okay. Should all workload be covered by personnel cost? Should the institution contribute beyond the people hired? And how should it be specified in the budget breakdown?
I think so. I guess what the question is about is is it possible to involve people who are not paid from the project? That's possible. So that would be in-kind contribution. So you're having involve maybe some experts also. They're not going to claim personal costs. In that case, you should mention that in the proposal, say what they are going to do, what expertise they are going to provide, and simply say not include them in the budget calculation. But that's absolutely fine and possible. You just need to make clear that it's in the proposal.
Okay, next up. In a consortium of more than one partners, can each organization use a different overhead rate, or does it need to be the same for all of them?
You can have different overhead rates. So you can all use the 25% flat rate the EC usually uses, but if you want to, you can also split that up. We only want to see a total. We don't care what's underneath. If the usual practice in different organization is applying a different percentage, that's fine. Just put the total in.
Next, is it acceptable to assign core implementation tasks, such as full stack development, to subcontracted external personnel budgeted as direct personnel costs?
So you can assign implementation tasks to other organizations. Is that third parties or subcontractors? But you need to follow the usual Horizon Europe rules, which means if you are involving subcontractors, then you need to claim the cost as subcontracting, and you need to make sure that you are getting best value for money, which means usually you need to have a tender process or kind of a framework contract in place. But you can't, if it's subcontractor, then you can't claim that as direct personal cost. So it should be calculated as an EC project, even so we are not going to ask for finance reporting.
Okay, if a platform provides data access only to scientists who contribute their data in return, would that still meet OSCAR's eligibility criteria?
Yes, I believe yes. So if I can interpret this question with, again, as my colleagues have done in the past, through an example, if we have an analysis platform, a virtual research environment that is already deployed by a cluster, and as a scientist, you log in, you work out your scientific analysis through data, and then in return, you feed into the database, into the virtual research environment, the outcome of your science that are data in some way in return. These still meet the OSCAR eligibility criteria. But be careful in this case, in this example, your project is more an open science project than an open science service. Therefore, the scientific value of what you are going to propose, the impact of the scientific topics that you propose in your project should be relevant and will be considered for the evaluation of the project.
Should PMs only include the PI or also hired staff? And for the PI, should PMs be strictly paid or can they reflect collaborative input?
So I guess that that needs a bit of an explanation what PMs is person months. So person months is not the time one specific person spends on the project. Person months is really just a measurement of time. So you can calculate that by saying, okay, one person is working 8 hours a day and then 20 days a month, and then you are ending up with 160 hours. So that would be a person month. If that's just one person, or if it's split between 10 people, it really doesn't make a difference. So you should really calculate the time in total you think you will need to implement the project, and that's what needs to go in there. And then if it's all, if you want to get claim the costs for that effort, so you would then need to think about an average salary for one person month, and that's your personal budget. If you are planning to, there's one PI involved, and then you are going to hire people, or you have existing staff who are working part-time on it, that really doesn't matter. You can split that up as you want, but you need to calculate the time you need for the implementation. And that's a measure for that time is a person month. I hope that explains the question.
Thank you. Are collaborations required, or can a single SME submit a proposal independently?
Yeah, that's absolutely possible. So it can be a consortium, but it can also be just one organization.
Okay, next. Are there any recommendations for including references? Could the numbering be included in the text and the references attached as an annex to save space?
Yeah, that's fine. That would be a good solution.
Okay. Next up, can a startup that has been established from scratch and has no history apply for coordination for its own project? And do you evaluate this?
I think from formally, there's absolutely no problem with that. We are not looking into track record or anything of organizations if they have done that before.
So what kind of financial reporting is expected? For example, invoices, receipts, bank report for payment. Is there any specific template or instruction?
No, so we are not asking for any finance reporting from our side. It's a lump sum funding. So you are getting the funding, and we are only looking at the scientific results, outcomes of your project. Nevertheless, obviously, in your organization, you will need to keep receipts and bank reports, and as usual in the accounting of your organization.
Okay, next up, we're a major open science community with many education resources, but lack infrastructure level funding. Can OSCARS support our integration into EOS clusters?
That's a question for the cluster people. Daya?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, this should be part of your work plan in the proposal. So you need to convincingly show why this would be relevant for the clusters and how you would do it. But this is the whole purpose of this instrument, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Making the text bold does not work for us in the grants platform. Try different laptops and browsers, but we're still unable to make the text bold. Is it a bug? Likely it is. It's something that we're aware of, and it's being addressed by our tech team. So we'll let you know as soon as that's fixed.
I think for the time being, what you could do is, if you want to highlight something, just use capitals. That works in any case. I think italics works as well. We are not really sure what's behind the bug just now.
Indeed. Next, the partner section of the proposal system is inflexible. Is it acceptable to list the consortium itself as a partner and give details in the main text?
I'm not absolutely sure what that refers to. So what we are asking for, and you should be able to do, is you're giving the details and the task and person months for the coordinator, and then there's another table for one partner, and you should be able to add with the plus more partners and put the details in. So yeah, for the task description, it should really work. I've seen already a submitted proposal where it has worked, so I'm not quite sure what the problem is here.
Yeah, Try it out and let us know if you're facing issues. Thanks, Rickard. And next up, should the project implementation section include a budget breakdown, even if budget details are entered separately in the form?
No, we don't need a budget breakdown, as I explained, so that not for the money. We only want to know person months per task per partner. So that's the only breakdown we are asking for. So don't enter anything in addition in any other part of the proposal.
How should we report collaborators not receiving compensation? Add them under financial support, add them under consortium, and is a letter of interest needed?
It's not needed, the letter of interest. As we said, it can be helpful if you have one. You don't need to list them under financial report, but under the description who's doing what, and then simply mentioning on the side so that they are not going to claim the cost, that it's in-kind contributions.
Are costs for contract technical support an eligible cost?
It should be, yes, but please have another look, or we can provide afterwards the link to the annotated grant agreement from the Commission if you want to be absolutely sure.
Okay, our project is open source. However, a large portion of the budget is allocated to personnel costs. Will this have a negative impact on your evaluation?
I'm not quite sure what the connection is between personnel costs and open source. Obviously, in open source, a lot of work needs to go in. So no, that has no impact on evaluation whatsoever. So you should plan the time you need to produce the open source stuff and the time you need to implement your project. And usually in all the projects we have funded so far, yes, the biggest part of the costs is personnel costs.
Okay, next, could you provide a sample budget?
I think it's pretty straightforward. If you are looking into the online form, it's really just the total personnel cost, total other cost, total of overhead costs, and then the full pot you are asking for is calculated by the system. There is not anything more.
We welcome individual contributions. Some of our partners won't have time to get permission to represent their institute. Can we add individuals as partners?
No, we can't. So because we can't pay out any money to individuals, there need to be a legal entity we can transfer the money to.
Okay. I think there's a bug in the trust grant system. When I export the application to PDF, the contribution table for partners is missing. Only the first is there. We'll have a look at that. Maybe if you can send us a message, we can at least keep track of it. But I'll take note of your issue, and then we'll have a look. But I can't identify you, so if you can just send us a message, at least we can let you know once the issue is fixed. Thanks. For project partners from the industry or SME side, do we add VAT to the calculation as for normal invoices, or is the project money a subsidy and hence without VAT?
Well, I must confess, I'm really not a specialist for VAT, and especially not in 27 or 50 different countries. I'm very sorry, but I think you need to ask your finance department.
Okay.
Friederike, I'm wondering about, not about this last question, the question before, when the colleague was wondering about the possibility of sharing the funding with partners who have no time to get the permission from their institution. The answer was clear, but I was wondering, is still possible to do that if the project is funded later in time, in the sense that PI gets our funding, but then the PI can distribute to other third parties, or this has to be defined into the proposal?
I think usually we would expect that the partners are defined. I'm not sure about if there is an individual researcher who hasn't managed to get an official letter from his head of organization or whatever, if that really is a problem. So I would usually think probably just mention the partner, and then okay, if worst case, then 1 of 10 partners needs to drop out when we are preparing. Yeah, that might be possible, but it should have all the partners included, simply to know if the expertise is there we need. Daya?
Yes, I would say that given that the proposals will be evaluated according to the work plan proposed, but also the team, the expertise of the team, it would be very strange that then partners that were evaluated would drop out, not only for formal reasons, but also how will the PI ensure that the project can be carried out in full. This increases the risk of the project.
Anyhow, just to be clear also more largely, very often funded projects are part, or either the OSCARS funding is part of a larger funding for a project with the extent of which is even larger than the 24 months maximum time of duration of the OSCARS funded project, because there is a background, because the project has a continuation in the future. Therefore, it could be that the project that you propose is, in terms of funding, going to provide a lump sum to a PI and a single institution. But around this PI and around this institution, there are other colleagues, other institutions working the project. Therefore, there should be a splitting in terms of participations of other partners in your project. But what matters for us and for the reviewers to evaluate the eligibility and the quality of your budget is that you define proportionally the person months and other costs that you need for the execution of the project in terms of the deliverables that you expect to reach with the OSCARS project. And then if there are other participation in kind, other participation funded through other schemes of other partners that you want to refer to support the value of your scientific endeavor, this is acceptable in the economy of the proposal, but doesn't mean it doesn't correspond to the splitting or the sharing or the funding that in order to be proposed should be details in terms of PI, co-PIs, main institutions and secondary institutions.
Right. Up next, can the share of indirect costs be arbitrarily agreed upon between partners, or does it have to be evenly split? So just 20% for partner 1, 25% for partner 2, etc.
Indirect costs are reflecting the overhead cost of an organization, which means that's rent of the buildings, the HR department or whatever. So it's nothing you can just pull up as you want to. So you really need to follow your usual practice in the organization, and so the finance department will be able to tell you their overhead rate, and that needs to go in. If that's then different for the different partners, that's fine. As I said, we only want to know the total. The easiest for a lot of organizations, and I used to meanwhile, is the 25% flat rate the EC is usually using. So then it's the same for everyone. But if there's a specific organization which has a higher rate because they're running a clean room or whatever, you could put that in. But it's not something random. It really needs to follow the usual practice of your organization.
Okay. Is the evaluation mainly based on the coordinator CV, or is the whole consortium's experience considered? How important is the choice of the project lead? Daria?
I think the work plan proposed is going to be most important, and then the consortium should be the optimally aligned with the proposed work plan. And of course, yes, the whole consortium's experience is considered, and the project lead should be showing to convincingly indicate the project can be carried out. But it is not more important than the rest of the consortium or the work plan proposed.
we would like to add, we would like to receive legal advice on data mining processes and the project process. Can we add this to our budget?
Yes, sure, that's possible. That's costs you could put into the project, and you can decide. So either it would be something like a subcontract, or you could also involve a legal organization as a partner. That might be actually the easier version.
Okay. Should we include costs for participation at the OSCARS final event, and what costs should we include here?
Yes, we would suggest that you include that into your travel costs. So probably the final event, we actually don't know where it's going to happen, but you will only need the travel costs and accommodation costs for the number of people you would like to send to that event. We are also inviting the funded projects to the yearly annual general meetings of OSCARS, simply to give them an opportunity to meet other funded projects. And we did that already this March with the first batch of projects, and I think it was highly successful and also a lot of fun for people to meet each other. But we have also some budget set aside for paying travel costs of the funded projects. But the absolute minimum would be that we expect you to put in travel budget for the final meeting, yes.
Okay, where do we explain the expertise of each organization if there is a consortium?
So that needs to go into the implementation part when you are explaining what you are going to do. But don't make it too long, so we don't need a full list of former projects they were involved in or whatever. It simply needs to concentrate on what you really need in your project and make clear that that's possible. I don't know if from the cluster someone wants to add to that.
Okay, if not, we'll move on. Budget form only allows tasks and person months. How should externally contracted devs be represented? Can they be included as PMs or treated differently?
So that's if you are involving someone externally as a subcontract, then that would be other costs, not personal costs, and you would need to explain it in that bracket, saying, okay, if we are going back to the example we just had, a legal organization who is going to provide legal consultancy work, then put it in the other costs.
Can a coordinator's legal entity be changed or relocated after the grant approval?
Yeah, in theory it could, but we wouldn't, yeah. I don't think it makes a lot of sense, and it would probably be quite time critical as well, because as Daya or we already said, the evaluation is based on the expertise in the organizations. If you are then changing organization, that would potentially change the risk for implementing the project. And from the administrative side, it simply means a delay, which could be quite long if we need to move that all around. So we wouldn't necessarily want to see that. If at any point possible, it's better putting in the application straight away the organization who is going to run the project.
According to the TPPA agreement, we cannot commercialize our project after it is completed, but I would like to ask to be sure, can we commercialize our project? Sorry, I think we lost your audio there for a second, Friederike. Or Giovanni, yeah.
I think it is impossible to answer this question because things have to be evaluated case by case. If you fulfill the commitment of respecting and onboarding the results and the action, let's say, generally speaking, of your project into EOSC, into the clusters, therefore you are committing in open science, this is, your commitment is fulfilled. your project has achieved the expected results, the project is over. Then if you want to take a profit, a commercial advantage from this after the end of the project, this is out of the responsibility of OSCARS because the project will be ended. If you are proposing to exploit the funding, the public funding of OSCARS to produce something that will be not open, but will be used for profit of a single private legal entity, I suspected that this doesn't match the expected results. There's the expected kind of commitment into the global open science policy in Europe. Third case, if your project is leveraging the open science for data, software, services, infrastructure, for making an open science project that are related to more than fundamental research to innovation, and such innovation is in aligned with the EU priority for innovation, European sovereignty, you must explain this, and you can probably be approved as a project because probably you want to just put the foundations for strengthening further the competitive role of a regional or a European industry in a global context, or even give the opportunity to a private company to extend on the market its own capacity. But this should be a sort of indirect results and not a direct results of the project. I'm not okay. I hope this could be useful as answer.
Okay, thank you for that. Are the CVs of project, our CVs of project leaders should be attached where this is stated and where should it be added in the system? So should the CVs be attached, please?
Yeah, we are not asking for CV of the project leaders. If you want to, you could add them right at the end of the your proposal application. You are able to upload additional files, so you could put it there, but we are not asking for it.
Okay. Can a proposal be submitted online only online using forms, or can a document be sent?
No, you need to use the online system.
Okay. Open source tool versus free tools for open science. Services/partners that provide free tools but not OS and our outcome. Does it have to be completely OS? OS, I suppose, open source.
I'm actually not sure. So I point to my cluster colleagues.
Okay. Open source tool. You mean, for instance, software that are continuously developed by a foundation approach. Community develop some software, the Linux operating system, for instance. While the tools for open science are developed in the context of a scientific community or a group or a pro RI. Services partners that provide free tools, but not open science does it have to be completely open science? Look, I don't know if I answer correctly, but the must is that the open source tools or open source data or software, whatever, should be fair, should respect some level of fairness, and therefore, if it is software, some level of standards of quality and legacy of software for accessing and archiving the software. If there are services, the fairness of these services are in terms of standards and legacy as well. I don't know. I hope it is fine.
I just wonder if it's related also to the license. So, for example, you can have a freely available tool with a closed software license. I think this is just wondering if it is openly available for the research. I mean, ideally, the related software would be open as well. So, but if it is free at the point of access for researchers, then that may be okay. But it could be interesting to explore why it is a closed source license and add a justification for that. Maybe something related to that.
And maybe, Sally, we could also add that we largely talk about open science, but actually, when we talk about open science, we do not mean free, everything free. Everything is not mandatory free. Should be fair, should be fundable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. But we could have services, tools, and data that are fair, but not free, in the sense that not accessible to all, because there are some protections, but at least they follow some standards to be fair to a category of users, and therefore open to a category of users.
Thanks. I think Daria wants to say something.
Yes, I think that if this is well justified by the consortium, but also in the proposal, then I think that you can get away with it, because if it makes sense, this is what we want to fund. I also would like to say that do consider that you will be competing for a finite budget. So we will be approving proposals that tick as many boxes for us as possible.
Thank you. I'm just conscious of the time. I know that we're at 4 p.m. already. Are we able to extend a bit further, or Friederike, I leave it up to you if you would like.
From my side, it's fine. Maybe, yeah, do some more questions. The questions we are not getting to anymore, we will try to answer afterwards. So they are all stored in Slido. So we will make that available later.
I propose to take 2-3 questions, and then I think we should conclude.
Very well. So do upvote the questions you think should be answered. So we'll pick just the last 3. So the CV rule is very important, or you attach it or not. In the criteria, nothing is written that the background of proposers should be considered. It's bias factor. Any comments?
Yeah, I think if you are having a look at the evaluation criteria, you will find there's nothing about CVs in there. And that's why we are not making it mandatory that you submit the CV. So please have a look at the evaluation criteria. They are all there.
Okay. And with that, we have second question. How does one add images or figures to project description?
Yeah, you can add that at the very end of the application. There's a button and you can upload them as separate files.
Okay. And for the final one, evaluation criteria seems to overlook the technical and scientific methodological details. Is it okay to remain succinct about them?
The question for Giovanni.
Evaluation criteria seem to overlook the technical, scientific, methodological details. Is it okay to remain succinct about that? I don't understand. Is the question a pure question? Is a rhetorical question? Are they underlined that there is the suspect that we do not consider enough the technical and scientific and methodological details, or I believe that these details are considered. Of course, we have to stay in a limited number of words, but the reviewers that are scientists as us will consider the technical, scientific, and scientific methodology.
Okay.
Yeah, Daria, want to?
I would like to say that this is going to be crucial for the proposals. So please do include both the technical but also scientific methodological details. Of course, you need to stay within the limits, but do not skimp on this.
Okay. I'm afraid that's the only time we have for questions. So we have Slido, which can be up for some time. I don't know how long would we like to be keeping or collecting questions, Friederike, before we close and answer them, or do we close them?
No,
as soon as the-
maybe we can leave it open until a quarter past and then shut
Okay.
it.
Very well. So for those of you who haven't put in their questions or something just came to you now, you have up until 4:15 CEST to put in your questions via the same link in Slido. And then we will put up the questions later. The answers to the questions later on. The recording as well. We will be putting that up in the same event page. So with that, thank you very much, everyone, for your time and for your very, very active engagement. We look forward to seeing your applications come in before the deadline. I leave it up to the panelists and to the moderator pass if you want to leave a couple of messages before we close.
On my side, I want to just to thank everybody. People are disconnecting already, I see. Just to say thanks a lot for your interest. I hope the answers to your question were useful, and best wishes.
Yeah, good luck from our side.
Thank you all. Goodbye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.